Most people kind of use AI with what they're already good at. Oh, I'm a great copywriter. Let me use AI. It can't write good copy. Of course, it can't write good copy. You've had how many hours of training, and how much of content have you put out? I ran the first podcasting conference in Australia, and there were people who just started a podcast that were kind of going, "I'm a podcast expert." And I'm like, wow, to see, and I just wrote a book. I'm like, I don't even I don't even know how to process this thing right now.
I don't know how much AI I want to introduce. You don't need the AI to adjust much.
Hey, it's Ronsley. Welcome, you AI geek, to Amplify AI. How do you go about creating content for, not the obvious one, which is the kayak, which you just go around and have a yak, but
Yeah.
the other piece of building a buzz. How do you go about preparing for the show, recording and then editing to create an engaging piece of content?
I think a lot of it comes down to the things that I find interesting and trying to hone in on those a little bit. Half of it is kind of like me talking about things I've learned. And then the other half of it is hopefully having some guests on and discussing with things they've learned. And really, like, I want to answer questions that will ask me on the day to day. And I want to ask questions that I'm curious about from other people. And I think, like, the curiosity side of a podcast is where a lot of people find value, is when people have similar curiosities. You can get a lot of listeners around that. And then as far as like preparing and doing, that's always been a struggle for me, is like I actually don't like having a schedule, and I like just random stuff popping up throughout the day and throughout the week and whatever, which is kind of hard sometimes to live a normal life, but like I like that. Like I don't know why, I just do. And so that's been a struggle for me, is I know that I could probably quote unquote succeed quicker with a podcast if I have like a, hey, every Tuesday I'm doing X, Y, and Z for X hours, and this is going to happen. And that is like what I'm working towards now, because I want to see more come from the time that I am putting into it. And I want it to be more of a regular thing. And I think like the structure part of it is the part that I struggle with the most from start to finish. Like, I got to schedule it, and then I've got to actually do it, and then I've got to go sit down and edit it, and then I've got to get the clips from it, and then I've got to post the clips. And so it feels like there's a lot to it, but like there's so many tools nowadays that has actually made that process like so much more efficient. I mean, probably better than literally anyone in this world. Like that process for you when you started, I can't imagine how different it is now, right? Like, can you guess like how much time maybe you've saved in the last year on podcasts compared to when you first started? Like
Oh,
probably
like
insane.
that's fascinating in terms of that you still feel like you've got, stuff to do and stuff to grow and places to kind of really improve on the podcast. Because that's the thing I find the most is I definitely feel I get better every 20 episodes. I'd say I can see a difference if I listen back. And I would say I get more, anything with more reps, the more you do, the better
Of
you get.
course.
I mean, AI is, to your point about how much this has changed, AI in the last year has, so what used to take 12 hours has been reducing a lot over the last few years. But last year, that change just went to minutes.
Yeah.
And things that you can do now at speed is absolutely, actually, the longest thing that you do is actually you watching the thing and kind of going, okay, this is good, this is what I want to put out. And that's what's taking more time than the editing and the pulling out of the content and all of that stuff. So what's fascinating is all the artists right now don't have an excuse for not
Yeah.
executing, because all this while someone with the best strategy didn't get results because they didn't execute, because they didn't know how to, or they didn't know how to do that at speed, also without the learning curve. And now with AI, that's all possible. How are you using it? Are you using it at all? I mean, a kayak, I don't know how AI fits into that.
I actually use it more than probably I would say most people. You probably use it more than me, But I think like in my day-to-day conversations, I'm like, oh, you don't use AI for that, and like, why not? And I think a big one is just something as simple as like a note taker during meetings, right? I used to have to like have one screen up with my notes and I'm like typing as the other screen, I'm like talking. And now I can just focus on the conversation, let that thing take my notes, give me a summary and a to-do list and so on and so forth afterwards. That alone has saved me so much time. But like I've created, custom GPTs for our admins, and actually after the 4Ds thing, like I threw in the entire presentation and like tried to create cohorts around, different customer segments and like made a custom GPT for that. And I try to figure out ways that will help not just me, but like all of the franchisees. So if there's ways that they can go and interact with it to answer questions rather than having to come to me, I've tried like so many different things. But I think at the end of the day, like the thing that it saves me the most time with is meetings, and then coming up with ideas, I think is a really important thing that I've used it for. Sometimes you don't have anyone else to talk to. You open it up and you ask it a couple questions and you've got your answer quicker than you would have got to that answer in the past, right? And so like that's probably the main use cases that I use it for.
That's interesting you say custom GPTs because like a week ago I had this meeting with, and you saw, must have seen the post because I made a reel about it. I had this meeting about custom GPTs and this guy was about to spend, I don't know, 100 grand for this guy to put all his IP into a custom GPT. And I'm like, dude, how is it going to safeguard your IP? And he goes, oh, don't worry. Like the instructions will not give up. I was like, hold my coffee, dude. And I got the instructions, not only the instructions, I got the instructions of his instructions not to give me the instructions. And it's so hilarious about what is competency these days around AI. But I love the fact that what's is very evident is that it's intelligence, and everyone feels more intelligence as a result of using it. Of course, they're going to feel more competent. It's a natural, I think, a response to using intelligence. So it's a good thing that I suppose people are feeling competent. The problem is that with marketing, the marketers are doing a good job to tell other people how competent they really
Yeah.
are. So it's really interesting. I asked you the question about how this is going to affect kayaking. Yesterday, I got asked to be on this company that is using heart rate variability and AI to increase our vibration so that we vibrate at a higher frequency. And I'm like, wait, what are you doing? That blew me away. I was like, I'm in. Like, where do I sign? How do I get part of? So how is the kayaking business changing as a result? Is it changing at all? Do you see anything? Like, do you see, business changing in any way?
On that level is a little bit, I think, further down the road for us. But I think on the level of like the customer's journey and the customer's experience of like booking with the kayak company and their interactions with the kayak company, like that's where short-term change is definitely happening. So I think it's like for me, like Google has AI answering questions now, right? And so like how does my business show up as that AI answer when someone says, what is the best kayak tour in Florida? And so that's a big one that I think about a lot. But I think like just in general, the customer's journey is going to get more efficient. It's going to get easier. People are going to find what they want to do faster. And I'm here to try and facilitate that on my end of things as much as I can. So whether that means putting out more content, whether that means refining our booking flow, whether that means creating chat bots that can answer questions quicker than a human can. Like, I think just the customer experience of the entire process, the entire customer journey is where a lot of changes are going to happen. The on the water experience, I kind of feel like that's where you don't need the AI to adjust much. I do think like we've thrown some of our talking points and ideas into it and it has refined those over time. And like, I don't even think the customer realizes that's happened. And I don't necessarily want them to, when they're doing this in person experience with other human beings. Like, I don't know how much AI I want to introduce to that. But I think like the back end and the efficiencies and the bookings and whatever, that's where I want to dig in a little bit and see where I can make things easier for everyone.
That's exactly what I want people to think about when they think about AI. It's the augmentation of human intelligence with artificial intelligence. And that's the whole book. That is exactly where you're supposed to, is exactly how you're supposed to use AI. Most people kind of use AI with what they're already good at. Oh, I'm a great copywriter. Let me use AI. It can't write good copy. Of course, it can't write good copy. You've had how many hours of training and how much of content have you put out? It's very different to, I hate writing emails. Yeah, that's where you use AI, right? You use AI to augment your weaknesses so that you can focus on your strengths. And you've obviously got a huge strength in the kayak. There's no reason to throw the baby out with the bathwater and look at all the other things that you couldn't do before and absolutely apply AI to that. So I'm glad that I'm having this conversation, primarily because for me, that's what I care about the most. I care about how people can augment the experiences and how can they not kind of go this or that and go, wait, if this is an and, the whole thing is way better. You can potentially give your employees a 4-day week because you use AI and have the best work-life balance culture around by using AI. But people are thinking, no, I got to leave these people around out because I'm going to use AI. That's not really the way to think about it, in my opinion.
I think like just in general, I feel like people are thinking of the tip of the iceberg when it comes to AI and not everything else that's under the water, under the surface. And yeah, people use it as like a quick little search tool or functionality. And that's like my experience with other people using it is like, oh yeah, I've used it to like ask it a few questions and give me some funny responses and create a little poem for me. And like, that's it. You got to really put your feet in your customer's shoes and see where you can make things more efficient, how you can implement that into all of that. I would love to like hear your thoughts on where you think people are really missing out when it comes to AI. Are you seeing that like most people are just using it to try and like create a little bit of content, or like where are people missing out the most when it comes to AI? And I think like people think of AI as like only Chat GPT too, right? Maybe that's part of it.
It's just when Facebook first came out and became the social media platform, everyone who had a Facebook account and posted a few times became a social media expert, right? When I started podcasting, and I had just started the agency, and I ran the first podcasting conference in Australia, and there were people who just started a podcast that were kind of going, I'm a podcast expert. And I'm like, wow, and I just wrote a book. I'm like, I don't even I don't even know how to process this thing right now. So that's happening right now in AI, because anyone that can use ChatGPT or can create a custom GPT is claiming to be an expert to the ones that don't know how to do that or feel like they have this narrative that they're technically not inclined. So that is what I think probably the first thing I'd love for everyone to not worry about or not think about more, and not give into that thought process that they're not technically inclined, because now computers have gotten to a point where it's all about the human interaction. When I started computing or getting involved, let's say this, my first programming language was in ones and zeros. So from that, we went into hex code. So we had 0 to 9, and then A to F, and then we could program in hex. So in that thing, and then it went into code, and from code now, yesterday I just recorded a video. No, I can program in 21 languages, but I'm kind of useless because it can program in all those languages and more, because I can just say, write this in this language, and it'll write all the code that I need to get it to run. I don't even have to know what it does, because
crazy.
that is insane. So how I feel people are not using it is they're not augmenting what they could do. For example, I was in New York and I got back my manuscript from the editors, and she'd given me 16 or 17 pages of corrections to do. And when I saw you in New York, that was week 5 of 7 that I had to give these corrections back. And I had not done anything because I didn't even know where to start. And there's a lot of things going on with the team and business and clients and other stuff. And then obviously Gary said something about inventing this vaccine and removing self-belief and self-confidence. Something happened to me, and I was like, on the walk back to where I was staying, I was like, I wonder if I could invent an AI to help me in this current situation. So I created an AI just to tell me what task to do next. I said, here are all the tasks. You classify them, you categorize them. I don't want to know the list. I just want to know what to do next. And depending on how many I do in a row, you can decide how you want to give me the next task to do. There were 33 tasks because I asked it to count at the end. I finished them all in 7 days. That is not humanly possible. It's not humanly possible. That was not possible 3 months ago.
Yeah.
We did not have the technology to do that 3 months ago. That is crazy for me. And I'll augment that with another thing that happened next, because I did that. I was like, I've done about 90 podcast interviews on AI, and I've interviewed Gary, I've interviewed Daniel Priestley and some Eben Pagan and all these, I'd love for them to be in the book. So I was like, hey, this is the manuscript of the book. It's complete. These are my podcasts. Tell me where and what I spoke about and how it fits into the book.
Wow.
It would have taken me and my team.
That's crazy.
That's how people are not using it. They're not thinking of it as a partner, as a teammate. And as an entrepreneur, we know this. The biggest jump is solopreneur to entrepreneur, because we've got to explain exactly what we want from our head to other people. So the same with AI, the better you get at explaining exactly what you want. So what kind of, like, when you look back at your entrepreneur career, like, what kind of messages or pieces of advice that you got along the way that you're right, oh, that made a huge difference, that changed my perspective, it helped me breathe better and deal with the situation differently?
I tell this to my franchisees a lot, is like, for me, at the end of the day, it's just kayaking. I think one of the other things that I've thought a lot about too is, at the beginning of being an entrepreneur, it was like, I'm betting on the business working. Like, I think this business is going to work because X, Y, and Z. And I set the business up to do this and this. And now it's kind of changed to like, the business is going to work because I'm part of the business, and because I'm who I am. And I've invested the time, effort, and money into myself so that the business can continue to grow. And at the end of the day, like, I know if kayaking disappeared tomorrow, like, because of who I am and what I've learned and what I've been through, I could go and create something else that I think would be meaningful. So I think like a little bit of the perspective change from like betting on the business to betting on yourself. And I've learned that in the 8 years of being an entrepreneur.
Dude, I think all that helped. All that was training, all that was reps, and all that made you the entrepreneur you are today. So thank you for that. Ladies and gentlemen, jbuzzi.com is where you go to find out all the cool stuff that Justin's up to. Thank you so much for this chat.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Hey, AI Geek. Thanks for listening. Your job doesn't stop here. I want you to lend your voice to the conversation. So you can join those conversations, discussions, new trainings, new recordings, and the rest of the AI Geeks by going to amplifyais.com. Also, share this podcast with a friend, another potential AI geek. Until then, much love.